Recording in progress. I hear an echo. I don't know why. Okay, so hey, welcome to tonight's meeting of the Sky Watchers Club. Barb's going to come up. First, Judy's going to come up and say something about these little mugs she has for sale if you want to buy one. And then Barb will do her thing. And then we got John Williams showing some stuff. Leonard will do his thing. And then I will give my presentation at the end. So right now we have doors open here in the meeting hall because it got kind of warm. But if things cool down later, we might have to run around and close them. So with that, Judy, why don't you come up and say your thing?
Hey, this is your last chance for a waning, whatever this, because it's your last chance to hold the universe in the palm of your hands. The planet Earth, the hands, the past and future are with the stars, bunch of circles and some comets and some planets and some all kinds of new stuff, all here in the palm of your hand. It's just the neatest thing ever, and there's only 3 left. So I'm going to start the bidding at $5. Can anybody beat me for that?
And who bought them last time?
Who didn't?
Yeah, he did, okay. And I know the Zubins did.
I'll take one. I'll go for 5.
Okay.
Sorry.
And if you want to go higher, I mean, I'm willing to let you go
That's
to
a good price.
astronomical prices are allowed. Anyway, there's 3 of them back there.
Yeah.
See me here, stick your money in the counter or something.
Yeah, we're in baskets. And can you tell Judy's a storyteller? That's her profession.
Can you tell I can talk one step to what's not?
Okay, yeah, let me just pass that. Here is the bid. Our calendar, effective in 120. For you guys. And I'm supposed to stand right here, Dewey says. So welcome everyone. As far as our next meeting, we're not sure of the date yet. And we may have it by the end of well, probably not the end of this meeting, but we'll let you know. I think Dewey had said, for those who don't get the Mountain Messenger, we should be once we know when the date is in speaker, we should be sending it out, at least to people who come up from down below, like Dewey and John Astolos. Am I saying your name? Astolos. And Mark might be here a little later. So we'll try to do that. I want to, yeah, so we'll let you know. We'll send you an email or a MailChimp and let you know the next date, but it will also be in the Mountain Messenger. And it'll probably be mid to late July. Can't do 4th of July because that's here and you might want to be here for that. We may have to talk to Susie about this, but we may try to do a SkyWatcher's booth. I don't think we're going to try to do the parade this year because we have our car, I don't know. Wait, John has a new car. Maybe we can decorate that for SkyWatchers. We got a sign. So if you're interested, I mean, Wayne and Marion, you worked in the booth quite a few years ago, right? Will you be here July 4th? And would you be? Okay. Yeah, so we might try to do a booth and then we'll, hand out various things, we've got some leftover items we could hand out and just tell people. We could sell them all. Yeah, we got 2 more left. That'd be great. And I want to thank the Mountain Messenger. They're always so good about we didn't get the centerfold this time. Sorry, Dewey. But they're always so good about giving us a few extra days, to get our story in and giving us more space than most people who do regular calls get. And anyone else have any announcements or anything?
You want to thank Oak Creek Canyon Park and Rec?
Yes, I want to thank Oak Creek Canyon Park and Rec. And we will, I understand they're going to do a farmer's market occasionally there, and we might try to tie that in, or, work with them, and do a star party sometime this summer probably at the Pocono Canyon K-8 school soccer field, where we did it probably 8 years ago or so. It's a great location, not perfect night skies, but if we don't have it might be a good night for the moon, for that. Oh, that's the other thing, John, you brought your telescope, your little dual telescope?
Yeah.
Okay.
It- Moon's pretty bright, but the moon, that's an
We can look
opportunity
at the-
also.
Yeah.
Did you see Susie's reply?
I-
It says.
Did she say?
Barb, 4th of July booths are sold out.
Oh,
You can get on the wait list.
okay, thank
She
you.
just sent that to us.
Okay, good, okay. Did she answer my question about whether we can walk out there if we avoid the steps? Because the steps aren't in yet. But Susie, yeah, let us know. The deck looks great. Thank you so much, and I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. All right, so the next part of the show is going to be John Williams, who is he hosts our Zoom meetings, and he does it from down in Santa Fe. And some people have sent him some stuff, and he's got some stuff to show. So it'll take me a minute to make sure that the Zoom sharing is up on the screen, so that not only people at home can see it, but the people here in the meeting hall can see it. So, hi, John, I'll let you know when you are up.
Well, I'm sharing it, so let me know.
Looks pretty full screen. All righty, John, you are up. Take it away.
Can we
Hey, everybody, how's it going?
Can we go?
Talking to you from, what's up?
Can we go total full screen?
Yeah, we're just trying to figure out how to get rid of the gallery images off to the side.
Yeah, see if John.
Just to hit the attendees. Participants,
What?
Participants.
down at the bottom, it says participants, I think you can use that to get rid of them.
Oh.
Hold on.
Oh, never mind.
Never mind.
Yeah, that was exactly not what we wanted. Usually there's a view, there's a little view thing. Let me click on that.
Yeah.
If I gallery something. So it's standard.
Full screen.
Well, that moved you guys up to the top. That didn't really make things bigger. Did I miss something in the review? Oh, full screen. Hey, how about that?
Hey.
Well, let me stick at these guys.
For George.
Yeah. Now, can I hide something? Yeah, how's that, guys?
Close enough.
I don't know if it's perfect, but it's good enough. Okay, John, take it away.
Okie dokie. So this is going to be a combo of some astronomy. Well, it's all astronomy, but there's going to be some professional astrophotography and some semi-professional astrophotography. So we're going to start off with, if doggone thing will advance. One of the cool things about, I don't know how you describe it, the president's budget for FY26 had dropped, about a week or so ago. And this image doesn't have anything to do with NASA or the budget per se, but what's been interesting is that to sort of we've increased our cadence in news at the National Solar Observatory. Noir Lab has increased their cadence of news. NASA with the Hubble and James Webb has increased. So this is kind of an interesting time. And it's all because we may not be around in a few months. And so trying to get as much done as we can. But we dropped this news release the other day. This is one of the clearest images of the sun taken with the Inouye Solar Telescope in Hawaii. And it shows something that we've never seen before on the sun, and it's these magnetic striations in those white areas, those stripes. Um, Everything on the sun is driven by magnetic fields, and this image really underscores that structure. Now, this image is the Earth is 12,700 and some kilometers across. So the Earth fills up about half of this image. So that's the scale we're looking at. At best, the Inouye Solar Telescope can see um, things as small as 25 kilometers per pixel. And so for an equivalent, that's like seeing a dime on the Statue of Liberty from San Francisco. So we've got some pretty amazing resolution. Anyway, one other cool thing that we released, this was not from the Inouye Solar Telescope, but we had some scientists working on some new adaptive optics at the Big Bear Solar Observatory, the Goody Solar Telescope there. And this is one of the clearest images of the chromosphere. This is there's the photosphere where the sunspots are. This layer is just above that, the chromosphere. Now we've colored it in pinkish to kind of go with H alpha light, which this image is taken in. But this is like one of the most detailed images of this part of the sun that anybody's ever taken. This technique that they've used, this adaptive optic technique, we are planning to use in the Inouye Solar Telescope, but other telescopes, other solar telescopes, can use this technique as well and bring out these details that we've never, we've never seen before. But this is the Hubble Space Telescope is still alive and well, and it apparently will survive the president's attack on science. But this is a dusty cloud picture from the Large Magellanic Cloud, one of the satellite galaxies around the Milky Way. Another Hubble Space Telescope. I'm going to drown you in pretty pictures tonight, okay? If that's all right. This is NG. I'm glad you like cheered there. That was great. NGC 685. I didn't put these in order of distance from the Earth, but maybe I should have anyway. 64 million light years away and toward Eridanus, the constellation Eridanus. Another spiral galaxy that's 30 million light years away, half the distance. NGC 3511. These are all images that were released by the Hubble in the past month. That bright star in the middle there is not a supernova, it's a star in our galaxy. But NGC 3507 is 46 million light years away. So, and what's cool about this image is not only the blue areas are new stars being created, the yellow stars are the older, sun-like stars, and those pink areas, those reddish areas, are areas of new star birth. And so this galaxy is just brimming with new stars being formed. And some of the reddish structures over on the right, those really kind of orangey reddish looking things, those are far off galaxies that are way far away. And there's like one over here that's got a little spiral to it. So these images are pretty deep, and we'll go deeper. This one's pretty cool. Again, new star formation, those blue stars, and a lot of dust in this galaxy extending way out. This is going to take a little explanation. We know that the universe is expanding, and we know that the universe probably is only, like 13, they pushed it back to like 13.57 billion years or so. I've said that this galaxy that's being warped by the Einstein ring, by the quasar that's nearer us than the galaxy that's curved. That galaxy is on the far side of this gravitational object, probably a quasar. Anyway, that it's 19.5 billion light years away. And if you think about how that could be, is that if the center of time was the center of the universe, we're on one side of it, 13 billion light years away, then something on the other side at 11 billion light years away would be 19.5 billion light years or so. Anyway, so that's what's going on. The universe itself is twice the size of how far we are from that moment in time. Anyway, I don't know if I explained that well, but just kind of try to wrap your brain around that. And then, this image is so cool because it's got all these other galaxies far, far away in it. Something closer to home. This is from the James Webb. That last image was Hubble. So we're moving on to James Webb. James Webb sees the universe in near infrared. So it sees more heat than it does visible light, although it does capture that. That's why that image on the right is kind of false colory looking. But this is a really good close-up of the aurora. And since we're in what's called solar maximum, we've been seeing more and more aurora on not only Jupiter, but Saturn and even Uranus and Neptune. I'm not showing pictures of those tonight, but we have been seeing aurora as far south as New Mexico. Last week, they saw them reported down in Florida near the Gulf Coast. So this is a great time to catch the aurora without having to go up to Alaska like Judy and George. Oops, I mislabeled that. That is not my image. Another James Webb image of what's called the Double Helix Nebula. And this is the Sombrero Galaxy, which is one of the best images from the James Webb. And then just feast your eyes on all those galaxies. So those bright pinpoints of light are stars in our galaxy. And all the fuzzy ovals and spiral galaxies, those are all far, far away. And that's just the tiny little sliver of sky. If everywhere we look in the universe, everywhere we look in our sky, there's even more galaxies that we can't see, like this. This is a real image, and I found it just to be such a work of art. It's another James Webb image of an Einstein ring. Remember, the bright thing in the middle is a very, very dense gravitational object, like a quasar with a supermassive black hole in the middle of it. And everything that is on the curves on the outside, that's light being bent around the gravity well, and it's distorted, but those are even farther objects on the other side of this quasar. These things were predicted by Einstein, absolutely verified. I wonder what he would think now. Would this match his description? Would he be blown away by it? I don't know. I often wonder. And then, of course, there's a crazier Einstein ring. This image is one of the farthest images back in time to just about 200 million years after the Big Bang. The universe was forming these galaxies, and lots of them, lots of stars were already being created, these big structures. So the universe spent no time organizing itself into galaxies and such. Pretty cool. I wanted to play this video here at the end. There's one more slide after this that we'll talk about. This will kind of segue probably into Leonard's talk. But we've all been told that Andromeda and the Milky Way are going to collide one day. Andromeda is the closest galaxy to the Milky Way, 2.5 million light years away. But this is going to set us straight.
For decades, astronomers believed that one thing was as certain as death and taxes. The Milky Way and our neighboring Andromeda galaxy were on a crash course, destined to collide in less than 5 billion years. That galactic smash-up would spark massive star formation, scatter stars like cosmic billiard balls, and possibly throw our sun into a whole new orbit. But now, that future may not be so certain. Thanks to fresh data from NASA's Hubble Space Telescope and ESA's Gaia mission, researchers have rerun the numbers, and they're telling a different story. Astronomers ran 100,000 computer simulations using the most precise data available today. The results? There's only about a 50-50 chance of a collision happening within the next 10 billion years. That's right, there's now a decent chance the Milky Way and Andromeda will simply pass by each other. No cosmic fireworks, no galactic pileup, just a long, swirling orbital dance. Why the change? This new study factors in not just the main galaxies, but also their massive satellite companions, like the Large Magellanic Cloud and M33. These smaller galaxies tug and twist the larger ones, disrupting the neat two-body collision model we once relied on. In fact, the Large Magellanic Cloud's gravitational pull might even guide us away from Andromeda. So, the universe may be saving us from a collision we were never going to witness anyway. After all, Earth becomes uninhabitable in about 1 billion years due to the sun's heat, and the sun itself burns out in 5. But hey, you never know, someone might still be around. Andromeda and the Milky Way may eventually collide, or not, at the end of their orbital dance, but the uncertainties in the simulations means we just can't say one way or the other. While the fate of our galaxy remains uncertain, one thing is clear. The universe is more complex and more surprising than we ever imagined.
John, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
You didn't want to fuck with the credits.
Oh, okay. Well, some credits playing.
How rude.
So we got 10 billion years?
Oh, here's the picture of the moon. So you're saying we got 5 billion years.
So I wanted to show that because I thought it was a great, I don't know, I saw that a couple weeks ago, thought I would share it with y'all. We're going to now move on to some of our astrophotography. Mark took this image of the moon when the Firefly, Bob, is that correct? You marked this image for Bob Grimm. I'm talking to him. He's online, but he's muted. Anyway, when his spacecraft was on the moon, Mark took this. We weren't able to show it at the last meeting, but we can. Here it is now. This is where the spacecraft landed, and from where I was here in Santa Fe, it was cloudy that night. Wasn't able to take a pic for Bob, and say Lovey. I'm just bragging. I was part of a show, and so apparently was David Elmore. Here in Albuquerque, 2 of my images got accepted in a juried show in the month of May. And of course, this is one of them. And my wife was nice enough to take this pic. That's at the Great Sand Dunes. I think I've shared this image in the past. And it's possible that David's picture is right over my left shoulder on that spaghetti nebula image. He hasn't gotten back to me about that yet, but anyway, this was the image at Sand Dunes from last summer. And here's the other image that was accepted. This is in Crestone, Colorado. They are stupas. They're kind of Buddhist landmarks. They're not temples. They're more like ceremonial things. This one's called the Temple or the Stupa of Enlightenment. It's filled with thousands and thousands and thousands of prayers from all over the world. You can't go inside them, but they've stuffed it with goodies. There's other things that are symbolic. Anyway, I got this picture. This bright thing on the right side is Jupiter. And then between the Jupiter and the Stupa is the Pleiades rising. If you're curious, and of course, this is a very wide angle picture. Backwards there. There's been a lot of clouds this past month here in Santa Fe. I'm not sure what it's been like up in Colorado, but it does produce some spectacular sunsets. This is a view from our house towards Los Alamos the other night. And I just had to include this for John Aslos. This is Starlink 31768 crossing in front of a 1.5-day-old moon last month. As much as I hate Starlink, I love this picture because I saw these satellites passing and I was like, oh darn, I'm not set up. I'm not gonna be able to catch them. And I don't know. I looked at my image and here one was. So pretty cool. Some other stuff I've been working on is some more deep space photography. This is M51 Whirlpool Galaxy in near Ursa Major, and another one near Ursa Major, M101, the Pinwheel Galaxy. I'm not very excited about. I'm still working on this image. I may have to take it again. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. It's a work in progress. I wanted to leave you with this. This is just NASA's budget cuts according to the president's fiscal year 26 budget. This has nothing to do with the budget request that's going through that was accepted by the House and is going to be argued by the Senate here in the next couple weeks. This is what the president proposes for NASA's budget and what the impact is. New Horizons gets whacked. Solar science is just going to get killed. A lot of climate missions. And I have to say, a lot of these missions are planned. So they're, in the drawing board in the beginning stages. And some of these, like Juno, is at Jupiter right now, providing incredible images and science. Mars Odyssey at Jupiter. Anyway, I just wanted you to be aware that this is what it looks like, this new future in science. It's pretty dismal. And then this is just NASA. To include the National Science Foundation stuff like the place I work, the National Solar Observatory. So anyway, I don't want to leave you on a down note, but I'm leaving you on a down note. Questions? Comments?
Can we write to our congressperson or the science committee and tell them?
Actually, that's a really good question. I can forward if you're curious. There was a note the other day from the it's called Solar News. It's something that I've been involved with for the past 8 or 9 years. It's a kind of a newsletter for the solar community, and somebody did actually the solar community put out a kind of a, hey, you should write these for specific Congress people. So if you're interested, I can send that email to you or forward it to you. That's what we should do. We should really make a noise at our Congress people that science is important. Science is very important. And one of the biggest, one thing that's under the threat the most, it seems, from what I've been reading, the president's budget does away with STEM at NASA. And it looks like it's going to happen at the National Science Foundation as well. We don't know. We're not privy to all the answer or the little things, but it's almost as if we're not interested in future science. I don't know. It's hard to fathom, but that's these are the things we should complain about if we want to. Anything else?
John, a question for you. Are you taking those galaxy images from your backyard?
Yeah, the skies here are probably, if you're familiar with Bortle skies, Bortle is a scale of dark skies from 1 to 9. 1 being the best, which would be, like the middle of the desert, Death Valley, might be Bortle 1, or maybe a place up in Eastern Oregon. These are Bortle 3, 4 skies, which is pretty good here in Santa Fe. Albuquerque, the Bortle skies, Denver is like 7, just for comparison. I think Coal Creek Canyon's probably sitting about the same as we are at 3, 4, 5.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's gotten brighter in the last couple of years up here.
Well, it's pretty bright here. The sky is, when we were in Crestone and Kanab, Utah. Oh my gosh, it is. I don't know. Or in Australia, those skies were Bortle 2, and you can hardly see your hand in front of your face. It's so dark. It's incredible. And the stars look like they're just three-dimensional, like a blanket on top of you. It's gorgeous. That's one of my favorite things. Anyway, one of the things I can do to make, help with those images of the galaxies, is there are filters that help with filtering out the light for the sodium light from the sodium lamps and things like that. So there are things we can do to help minimize that sky brightness. But like right now, the combination between the city lights and the moon make the sky for galaxies just so tough. What would take 3 or 4 hours would take now, 12 to 15, 20 hours of imaging to get the same light from those far off galaxies.
Yeah.
All righty.
We got one
Sorry.
more question from George here, Mike. I'm done. Go
I
ahead,
didn't hear the
George.
question.
John, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Think about the starting images that you were showing us. And think about the ones that were, I think, like 134 billion light years ago or something. What was the status of the Earth when that light left those galaxies? Do you have a feeling for that at all?
Okay. So that's a cool question. So some of those Hubble images that I showed, were 40, 35 million, 40 million, 60 million. So the light that is from those galaxies left like when the dinosaurs were around, or 30 million light years ago. So we're looking back in time. So these images of well, like when the one image was 200 million light years, 200 million years after the Big Bang. That means that this was 13.4 billion light years, years ago, that light left, or that galaxy, those galaxies, and now it's hitting our eye. The Earth and the sun were only created out of the nebula that formed them 4.5 billion years ago. So we actually are, one cool thing to think about is that when those galaxies formed 11 billion years ago or 13 billion years ago, some stars in those galaxies were big, super bright, super massive stars that exploded in supernovas, right? You've heard that we're all made of star stuff. It meant that those stars that blew up 11 billion years ago were able to spread their elements, the heavy elements, the things after iron that aren't produced inside regular stars like our sun. So it needs a supernova explosion to create carbon, not carbon, gold, even anything after iron in the periodic table. And so everything that we know on Earth, a lot of the elements that make up our bodies can only be formed inside a supernova. So those stars actually seeded a star that formed and has died, and has formed and died again, and then formed us, if that makes sense. Those are the timescales we're talking about. I mean, it's sort of mind blowing, right? Does that help answer your question, George?
That's what I was asking.
Oh man, I'm like mind reading tonight. Excellent.
John,
I can see you smiling back there.
John, John, I have a quick comment about your, one of your photos. You showed the, H alpha view from Big Bear Observatory. Interestingly, online on YouTube, there's a bald eagle cam that has fledged two small, or, you know, now they're big eagles. But in the background of that view is the Big Bear Observatory out on its peninsula out in the lake.
Yep,
And
we've heard.
pardon?
Go ahead.
Oh, no, that was about it. It's very
Well,
good.
one of the cool thing, one of the interesting things about that is that we've been building a structure, and we've had to be very careful with our noise and our light because of these eagles.
Okay.
And it's you know, it doesn't impact science much, but it's cool when, you know, the community is sensitive to other science at these areas. We're not just like, hey, what the heck? So yeah. Anything else?
Not here, anybody
Hey,
else?
John, it's Mark.
Hey, Mark.
So, yeah, that picture that I sent in, Bob Grimm put in a circle where his lander landed. It's really hard to see, but that was pretty neat that he did that.
Let me see if I can bring that back up. See if we can point it out. Can
It
you see
wasn't my
that?
lander. I was just along for the ride.
Going through, can you see my
That was it.
slides and then
Go
going
back,
through?
go back.
Back in.
Oh, there it
Right
is.
there.
Yeah, we see it.
Right in there.
Right in that circle. Did it come alive when the sun hit it again?
No, it did not,
Yeah.
but it landed fine the first time, which is all I cared about.
Better than the Japanese. Well, maybe Leonard will talk about that. All right. Hey, thanks, Mark and Bob.
Yeah.
Anybody?
I don't have anything else.
Thank you, John.
My pleasure.
All right, now we're gonna see if I can figure out how to get this screen back where it was. And then it'll be Leonard's turn to talk. Exit full screen, that looks pretty good. You can take that little guy down. Move him down to here. And come over here.
And I want to thank Dewey for taking over the technology here, and John.
Oh, we're not sure yet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now I got.
There's some-
Leonard's thing.
There's some things we can do, Barb, but Dewey and I have talked, and we don't want to make the Zoom experience so good that people don't want to show up.
Yeah.
I
Yep, like, it's like planned obsolescence.
Yeah.
Okay, oh, I didn't share my screen. See, this is why I have to remember this stuff.
I don't see this on.
Yeah, I know you don't, because I'm not sharing my screen yet. I need to bring this up here and do share.
Is this your camera?
Yeah,
Jesus.
yeah, it's old.
Man.
Lots of technologies is.
like World War
Right, so you guys seeing it now?
Yeah. No.
You said
Looks
no,
good.
and
Looks good.
That's what you're supposed to be seeing. So. Move this up a little. Tweak, tweak, tweak. And.
Well, I see it. It's first.
This. Come on, let's back it up. There you go.
Okay, is it on?
Is that?
It's good. Here we go with this thing.
Yep.
Well, as always, it's been an exciting 24 hours.
So much is happening at once. It's pretty amazing roller coaster of space events going on. A couple days ago, we're at the School of Mines, and we're watching at a space resources conference about mining the moon. The Japan's iSpace spacecraft was coming in for a landing. Pretty exciting time. They had the room all quiet, and nothing came out from the other side about the health of the lander. Well, it turned out to be a crashed event, and they launched. It was called the Resilience Lunar Lander, which is even more telling. Anyway, it crashed, and it was a sad event. These people, this is their second in a row, trying to land a spacecraft on the moon. Had a mini rover on it. A lot of hoopla about it. Everybody was excited. I've never seen three glum mission controllers giving a press conference post landing crash. It was kind of sad. And hopefully, the group is a private group called iSpace, and they have a significant amount of money in the Japanese aerospace community to attempt another one in a couple of years. But it definitely was a critical blow to their egos, and all the team that worked so hard to try to land on the moon. Anyway, it's lessons learned, and hopefully they'll pick up from the lunar dust and dust themselves off and move on to another one.
Leonard,
Yep.
so I saw that the word was that this one ran out of fuel. And that's the same thing that happened to the last time they did
Yeah.
this. Have you heard that?
I haven't heard that one. I've heard a lot of other things, that they, lost comm much earlier than they expected. Blah, blah, blah. I don't know if they know exactly what happened. I'm sure they're pretty good on that. One big plus for a lot of groups is, lessons learned. If they're straightforward with it, and we've had in the US the intuitive machines crashes back to back, or not crashes, but incomplete missions, and everybody's sort of sharing the information, which I think is a healthy thing. Unfortunately, a lot of different kind of technology that Japan uses compared to the US. So I'm not sure, other than be aware of this and that, and maybe have more fuel. I don't know. But I was told that it was kind of lost early on, much earlier on the descent than
Communications.
yeah, communications wise, they had some problems.
Mark, where did you hear about the fuel?
It was on the internet.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. Everybody's an expert on this stuff anymore, and they all have, and I think dissecting it and do a CSI on failure is great, and I think that's for them. They'll be out there talking about that. So I think that's all a good thing in the wake of a failure. But it's tragic that we lose these spacecraft. It does create another crater on the moon that we can study. Anyway, on the
Hey, this is Bob.
yeah.
Can I don't think it ran out of fuel. It's well known why it ran out of fuel last time, because it did not acquire the surface, and it was like hovering at, I don't know, a mile up or something, thinking it was right above the ground. So it just hovered until it ran out of fuel. This time it was, when you looked at the display, it would go
Yeah.
back and forth between being a simulation and being actual telemetry. And so they were getting telemetry until a mile or so high, and I forget how fast it was going, 100 meters a second or something then. And then I think when it pitched over and was supposed to acquire the ground, I don't think it did. And so if it is a problem with the laser altimeter, either the software or the device, that would be a common thread between them and the machines failures. I did look, and Firefly used the laser altimeter also, as well as doing optical navigation. So I don't know what is different, but yeah, this one's really got us worried because iSpace's United States subsidiary, together with Draper Labs and others, are the contractors for the Schrodinger mission that we have our second. We have the Litmus suite on, the combined electromagnetic sounding and heat flow suite, and that's been put off till 2027. So I hope that number one, that they don't put it off more, and number two, that third time is a charm and they get it right. So it's pretty troubling for the whole CLIPS program. And at least we have the Firefly success, or I think the whole thing would have been canceled.
You
So
might
we're-
say what the clips, do the clips thing,
Oh,
so
sorry, CLIPS is the whole commercial lunar payload services program that's funding all these companies to startup companies to send landers to the moon.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, Bob's lander was successful. And hopefully that can be repeated on the next go around. Anyway,
Yeah, there was just to count them up. There was 4 United States landers, 3 failed, 3 Japanese landers, 2.5 failed. A Russian lander failed. Israelis failed a couple years ago. The Indians stuck it. So, that's it. 2 out of, plus the ones that were canceled on the ground for various cost overruns or bankruptcies or whatever. So it's, internationally, it's like, 2 in 10 over the last couple of years.
that's pretty interesting. Good. That's great. Okay, that's a good update on that. I think on the suborbital tourism, we had another New Shepard flight with 6 people. Very successful. Again, suborbital goes up, past the Von Karman line. They become astronauts, but it's a very fast, few-minute ride, experiencing microgravity at the apogee, and it was a big hit. I watched. It was a lot of very successful, almost routine. That always worries me, but you never know if something can go wrong. China back on May 28th launched a mission to an asteroid for collecting a sample, sort of like the U.S. OSIRIS-REx. It will grab some samples and bring it back to Earth. What did I write down here? Collect the samples in late 2027. Drop those off. It'll arrive at the asteroid in July of 2026 and grab the samples. And so whatever the collectibles are that they grab with the spacecraft will come back in 2027. And then once it ejects the capsule, the main body of the spacecraft from China will go on to a kind of an odd ball of some kind of object that's either an asteroid or comet or both or whatever it is. But anyway, it's going to be moving on to that after this asteroid sample mission. So that's a good thing for China. We had a close encounter with a NASA administrator that at the last moment really got aced out by the Trump administration, even though they supported him. And so this guy, Jared Isaacman, he had flown twice on a Polaris mission that he paid money for, and was he's a great, one of these self-made entrepreneurs, and had to testify before the Congress, and was apparently given the go-ahead by everybody, and at the last minute they pulled the plug on this guy. Why? I don't know. He says that he's going to be busy. He's never been unemployed before, and so so he's not going to go away anytime soon. He'll have another mission that he'll fund himself to go up and do some experiments in space. A very interesting character, and we don't know exactly what the new nominee is going to be. Lots of rumors about a certain person, kind of a military Space Force guy that the Trump folks seem to be interested in, and we'll probably know fairly soon. But the important thing to realize is it's going to take maybe weeks and months to get that person confirmed. So meanwhile, with all the problems, as John alluded to, about the budgets and there's a woman from Kennedy Space Center that's the acting administrator, and it's turning out acting is a really important role, in Washington, D.C. Everybody's acting, and how influential these people really are to make decision making that will adhere to the Trump policies. We'll see. But I think NASA's in a spin dive from a leadership role. So we'll see how this plays out. But meanwhile, you've got, as of Thursday, the budget that NASA is working to that has been severely damaged in space science and quite a number of other aspects of NASA is being relooked by Ted Cruz of Texas, and he just on Thursday, I think I wrote, put in another bill to try to get the money back that had been targeted to take out of NASA. So, as always, it's that ping pong match between the administration, which it always is, but this one's more severe than in my recollection of budget, budget problems. And this has got a mark of disaster if all those budget cuts really stay in the certain way in the Trump administration. So we'll see how this is going to play out. I mean, we're talking about Artemis slow down. We're talking about the Orion capsule being retired. All these kind of things are part of the whole budget process that are being discussed. SLS, the Space Launch System, the rocket that will put people back on the moon. So it's really for a writer, it's kind of interesting and it's great because I've never had editors ask me for an article. It's usually me begging, I should write this. And I never had so many editors say, can we, what's going on? Of course, I have to write the article and pretend I do know what's going on. But anyway, and one of the things to watch with Ted Cruz, he's definitely playing the China card. He is pretty bullish on, we have to watch out for China. In that bill that he just put in Thursday, it's pretty specific about making sure the Chinese don't get back to the moon before we do, or land on Mars before we do. So it's a really an interesting dynamic with Ted Cruz, how much support he's going to have with all the other problems the Trump budget is bringing up. We'll see. So it's all a TBD. Anyway, this has been again, last week was just unbelievable about the Trump Musk breakup, collusion. I don't know what it is. Clearly, there's some problems here between the two, and what the ramifications of that will be with Musk going forward on his Starship and a lot of the government contracts that he is gleaning right now with NASA, back to the moon, onto Mars, whatever. But Starship itself is still problematic vehicle. It's had multiple failures. The Starship part of it, the super heavy launcher is working fairly well, and that, you know, that's the thing. It flies back to the launch pad to be recycled and reused over and over. But the Starship on the top there on this photo on the left is kind of problematic at this point. But you know, Elon Musk is moving forward, and you know, iterations of failure is part of the process of success. So he's sticking to it, and we're going to see a new Starship take to the skies coming up in probably a week or so, another couple weeks. They had a static firing of some components on the launch pad yesterday or the day before. I can't remember, but so things are moving forward on the next Starship flight. Again, nobody's on it, but it's going to have to start really working well to meet the criteria that NASA is expecting, and even Musk. So beyond that, he's got a major statement about Mars and putting civilization on Mars, making Earth kind of multiplanetary species. He had a great talk. It's really great, and a lot of PowerPoints, and you know, now you got to push those PowerPoints into reality. But he's got a master plan for Mars for sure. All right, I keep an eye on this. This is, to me, the story that's not been told much, but Blue Origin. This is his competitor with Jeff Bezos and the Amazon crowd. They have a pretty, a week or so ago, they kind of unveiled a bunch of plans that they have in work, and it was pretty impressive. I mean, I see Jeff Bezos and his Blue Origin group, a business plan. Elon Musk, philosophical, you know, multi-planet species, sounds great. This guy's got Amazon to the moon, and he's going to launch by the end of the year, according to these guys that discussed it at a lunar meeting, the Mark 1 robotic lander, that be the largest lander ever to put foot pads on the moon. Over on the left there is comparison to the lunar module used by Apollo. And then they're working at the same time on the Mark II vehicle, which is a NASA-supported vehicle for human missions to the moon. I see them as clearly, to me, a business plan in motion. And they've got some really exciting experiments they're going to be doing on the Mark 1 lander that I think could pave the way for doing some private sector lunar exploration and on the moon, making use of the resources that are available. So I was pretty bowled over by their plan, but I'm easily fooled. So what now? I have no idea. I don't know where we're going. I kind of like not knowing, because it makes more fun out of the whole next week. And then my big consultant on this is Jerry, my puppet from 1950, who I talk to pretty much every day, unfortunately, because Barb is very worried now.
Yeah.
But Jerry is telling me to keep my eye on everything. Thank you. I don't know if I have questions, and I don't have any answers.
I just gotta say, you gotta fix Jerry's string, so his.
Yeah, unfortunately, the string broke about.
That's why his mouth is.
Yeah, his mouth is kind of hanging there, and I can't use the string anymore. But I got so many people pulling my string, it doesn't make any difference.
Anybody else have questions for Leonard?
All right.
Any Zoomers? Okay, well,
Your turn. Pull them all over.
I'd like to introduce our next speaker. That's me.
Oh, that's right.
Thank you.
He's got the intro. You have to introduce yourself.
I got my introductory comments. What have you got? Sure.
I'll just, okay.
So, what were you gonna say?
Well, what was in our, the Mountain Messenger and stuff, you know, just that, and just both Dewey and John have made this happen over the last 10 years with the technology. And that's a great relief for me. You know, I can worry about whether we got a table with the Wonder View for anybody who wants to go there, you know, or, you know, doing the article, and John always writes for the Mountain Messenger, and you know, his what to see in the night sky, and I really appreciate that. And you know, for those of you who don't get it, there is, she usually doesn't have it till about the 6th of the month, but you can go to the website for Mountain Messenger and then hear about whoever our next speaker is. And but I'd be glad to send that out every month. So yeah, just
Okay. It's me. Let me get this first frame set up here. Okie dokie. So, some backstory here first. Some of you may remember about a year or so ago, we had a meeting that got snowed out. So we said, hey, we're just gonna go Zoom all the way, just a pure Zoom meeting. We didn't come to the meeting hall. Our speaker was Robert Zubrin, and he was promoting a book he had written. And he thought, Zoom meeting is, pure Zoom is not the best way to promote a book and make book sales. So what he said was, how about some other time? And so he kind of punted on doing that meeting. And so I kind of put together an emergency presentation on novas. Maybe some of you remember that. And what I did was I just basically took the PowerPoint presentation and recorded the narration and turned it into a video and played the video over Zoom. By the way, the punchline of that talk about novas was that there was this star, T Corona Borealis, that was supposed to go nova sometime last summer or early in fall. And it hasn't gone yet. And the last I've heard is the prediction is any day now, but it's been that way for a couple of months. So in case you've been wondering whatever happened to the T Corona Borealis story, that is that. But anyway, what that did was that planted the idea that, oh, I should produce an emergency presentation and just have it at the ready in case we ever have a case where our speaker has to cancel and that sort of thing. So that's what I did. Now this month's meeting became problematic because there was actually an activity here in the meeting hall that ran into this afternoon. So we weren't going to be able to get here into the hall till about 6 o'clock. Now, normally what happens is I show up about 3:30, set stuff up, and then test things, make sure they work. And then I arrange for the speaker for that night to show up at 4 o'clock so that we can copy his presentation over and make sure everything works. You're going, wait, everything doesn't always work. But anyway, that's the intent, is to try to reduce the problems we'll have during the show. Then at about 4:30 or 5 o'clock, we head over to the Wonderview Cafe for dinner and then come back for the meeting. So what that means is not being able to get here till 6. This was not a good time to have somebody from outside who doesn't know our routine come in, try to get everything set up. So that seemed like a good time to air my emergency presentation. So that's what we got, is my emergency presentation. Now, one of the things that means is that if anything goes wrong with today's presentations, I don't have anybody to blame. So it's all going to fall on me. This is not a technical presentation. There's no science, there's no equations. It's more like a,
Sorry.
it's more a personal tale, kind of like what I did on my summer vacation. If my summer vacation was 16 years in the 70s and 80s. And it's kind of focusing about, I lived in Florida during that time, And that meant I got to see some space stuff that maybe not everybody got to get. So that's kind of what I'm going to be showing. I have far fewer photographs from that time than I now wish I had. I wish I had been more like kids today, taking pictures of everything. But I do have some stuff up there that you'll see. So with that, allow me to be a little self-indulgent and just talk about me for a while. It takes about 35 minutes to show. Being a video, it means hold your questions until the end. Okay, here we go. This is about my time living in Florida in the 1970s and 80s, with emphasis on space stuff. My dad was career Air Force, and he was transferred from the Washington, D.C. area to Patrick Air Force Base on the east coast of Florida in the summer of 1972. Now, I had just graduated from high school, so that was good timing for me. Like a lot of military people, Dad had declared Florida to be his official state of residence when he had been stationed there around 1950. Florida has no state income tax, so military people tend to do that if they ever get stationed in Florida. You would see a lot of Florida license plates on military bases. Being Florida residents, it made sense for me to attend the University of Florida in Gainesville because I could get the in-state tuition rate. And this means that Mom and Dad were only 3 hours away, good for weekend visits home. Patrick Air Force Base is just south of Cocoa Beach, which is just south of Cape Canaveral and the Kennedy Space Center. Dad bought a new house in Satellite Beach, just south of the base. It was a short drive to his office in the Air Force Technical Applications Center, seen here along A1A. The rockets on display in front of his building made it clear. We're now living on the Space Coast. Shortly after we moved in, Dad signed us up for a VIP tour of the Kennedy Space Center. So, one morning, we went to Patrick to board a bus to take us up to KSC. The fact that the bus was a blue school bus kind of diminished the hoity-toity sense that we're VIPs. This being the summer of 1972, the Apollo program was still in full swing. Part of our tour included a tour inside the Vehicle Assembly Building while Apollo 17 was being assembled. I saw a Saturn V under construction inside the building. They even took us up to the top of the VAB inside, and I remember looking down at the dots that were people and the tiny-looking semi-tractor trailer trucks down there. I joked about dropping a penny from up there, and our tour guide did not seem to think that was funny. Unfortunately, I have no photos of this tour. Now, this one I got by Googling. My only camera at the time was a little Kodak X15 Instamatic camera. And I may not have had film in it and not realize that I, of course, should get film in it. It's also possible that they didn't allow taking photos on the VIP tour. The best thing I could find online was this photo of the Saturn V in the VAB viewed from above. Now, I don't think we got right above it like this. My memory is more the long shot as you enter the VAB, seeing the rocket at the far end. Maybe more akin to this shot of the rollout from the VAB to the launch pad. It was actually at a scale that I found hard for my mind to grasp. I only have the now hazy memory of seeing the Saturn V in the building. Plus, I remember walking down a hallway where you could look down into a room that had some simulators that the astronauts trained in. And I remember seeing a booklet on a desk that said something like, Lunar Module Operations Manual. Okay, so this is the real deal. Now, come September, I headed up to Gainesville to start college. And come December, it was time for the Apollo 17 launch, the first and only night launch of a Saturn V. Now, being just a college freshman, I did not have a car for making the trip down home to watch the launch. But I had a high school buddy who was also at the university who did have a car. So we drove down to Patrick Air Force Base the evening of the launch. Our vantage point was the beach at the Patrick Air Force Base Officers Club. This put us about 24 miles from the launch pad. There was a fair crowd on the beach, and everyone had their transistor radios to listen to the countdown. Now, as it happened, there were some technical problems with the system, and there were some delays. Liftoff didn't happen until after midnight. From our position on the beach, as I recall, we only knew roughly where to look. From that distance, we didn't see the classic brightly lit rocket on the pad. But the moment of ignition left no doubt about where to look. There was this sudden glow on the horizon, and then the bright mini-sun of the main engines. As it climbed into the clear night sky, we could see it arc to the east. And then, when the first stage was done, we saw the flame change from bright yellow-orange of kerosene to a dimmer blue of the liquid hydrogen. Very distinct when the staging happened. And then the blue dot faded off into the distance. I have no memory of seeing the path begin to arc down as it went eastward over the horizon, but maybe I did. In just a few minutes, the whole show was over. But I must say, when the first rocket launch you ever see is a night launch of a Saturn V going to the moon, you're kind of jaded after that. Hard to impress. After the launch, my friend and I headed back up to Gainesville. The next launch I witnessed was a Skylab mission in 1973. I remember that I had just had my wisdom teeth removed and was still recuperating. My mom drove me over to the Officers Club beach to watch it, the same spot we had watched the Apollo 17 from. Now, my memory is that that was the Saturn V launch of Skylab itself. But when I checked the dates, that was on May 14th, and I would still have been up in Gainesville. Even the Skylab 2 mission, the first one to send a crew, was on May 25th, still during the school year. The only date that makes sense was Skylab 3 on July 28th. That would have been a Saturn 1B launch, not a Saturn V. Now, the Saturn 1B is such a weeny rocket compared to the Saturn V that it actually needed a booster seat, pardon the pun, in order to fit the Saturn V launch tower. Here is my photo of the launch. I've zoomed in on that old Instamatic photo a bit and added an arrow to show you where the little bright dot is. That's the rocket. You probably can't see it, so yeah, not as impressive as a Saturn V. The next launch I saw was another Saturn 1B for the Apollo-Soyuz test project, to see if we could really cooperate with the Russians. Now, this was the summer of 1975. Rather than go to Patrick Air Force Base, a friend and I drove down to a spot pretty much due west of the launch pad in Titusville. At least, that's what I remember. Now, we're only about a dozen miles from the launch. Again, this was a Saturn 1B, and so, while neat, it was no Apollo 17. After those launches, the U.S. was pretty much done launching humans into space until the Space Shuttle. There continued to be rocket launches at the Cape, and the local newspaper, Florida Today, always had upcoming launches listed on the front page. I do remember one summer, home from college, wondering if I could get a job working construction up at the Kennedy Space Center. They were building the Space Shuttle landing strip at that time. I thought that'd be pretty cool to be able to say I helped build that. But I never pursued it. I do remember one night driving down from Gainesville to Satellite Beach, driving down I-95, and I see this really bright light off in the distance to my left, going up in the sky. And, oh my gosh, what's that? And then, oh yeah, I remembered the Space Center's right over there. Must be a rocket launch. Just one of the things you just happen to see living in that part of the country. Every so once in a while, rockets go up. In 1978, after 6 years of being a very poor student at the University of Florida, I left without a degree to take a job as an engineer's aide at Pratt & Whitney in West Palm Beach. The friend with whom I had watched the Apollo-Soyuz launch had graduated and had a job there working on jet engine stuff. This was the Government Products Division, and their claim to fame was the F-100 engine that powered both the F-16 and F-15 fighter jets. He had told me about this engineer's aide position that didn't require a degree. I was hired into a group that was working on laser weapon systems. I worked there for 2 years, 1978 to 1980, before getting my attitude straight and returning to the university to finish my degrees. During my time there, somehow a tour of the Kennedy Space Center was arranged for some of the engineers at Pratt & Whitney. I got to go along. For me, it was almost like going home. My parents still lived in Satellite Beach. Now, on this tour, we did go into the VAB, though we didn't get to go up to the top. We did see a control room, which I'm sure seemed to be filled with really high-tech computers at the time. Now, since the Apollo program was history at this point, there was no Saturn V inside the building. But there was one lying on its side outside, so you could really get a sense of the size of the thing. I happened to catch a car driving by for size comparison. And like many of the photos you'll see here, there's some smudgy stuff from scanning the print. There was not a row of flying objects in the upper corner. Here's a shot of the business end. One of the things I remember from that tour was that the tour bus we were on, once we got there, actually drove out onto the Space Shuttle runway, so we got a ground's eye view of that. Nearby was the Space Shuttle removal tool that was used to remove the shuttle from atop the 747 that was used to transport the shuttle to the Space Center. Now, at this time, there were not yet any operational shuttles on hand, but the very first shuttle, named Enterprise, had been used for early flight tests, being released from the 747 and then gliding to a landing. Enterprise was at the Space Center, but not in the VAB. It was actually out on the launch pad so that they could verify that the launch tower and the servicing structure would fit. And our tour bus actually drove out near the pad so that we could see it. Now here you can clearly see the fuel tank and the solid rocket boosters. Notice that the fuel tank is white. Only the first 2 shuttle launches used fuel tanks that were painted white. Then, as I heard at the time, somebody did the calculation of the mass of all that paint and decided they'd rather use that mass for useful payload. From then on, the tanks were the orange color you're familiar with. But I don't know if that explanation's true or not. Unfortunately, this is about as close as our tour bus got to the launch pad, but they did drive all the way around it. I tried a photography trick for the first time where I held my Instamatic camera up to one eyepiece of my binoculars while I looked through the other eyepiece to frame the shot. Here's what I got. Not too bad. We were close enough that the shuttle more than filled the view through the binoculars, so I took 2 photos and then lined them up to make a bigger shot. Here's a slightly better shot where you can see more of the shuttle itself. They had the servicing structure swung into place around the shuttle, so you could only see a little bit of it from the side. But you can make out the body and the leading edge of one of the wings. Now, here, I've roughly outlined the wing in yellow and the fuselage in orange. See it? I was particularly pleased with how well this worked because one of the optical engineers in our laser group told me that wouldn't work. Now, there are some challenges to it, but the principle is solid. In 1980, I returned to Gainesville to finish my degrees. Now, I joked that earlier I had been on the rotating majors program, having started as an engineering major, then thinking maybe physics, and then 1 quarter as a music major, then back to physics, and then added on mathematics and computer science. All noble goals, but that was during my bad student days. Now, returning to Gainesville with motivation intact, I pushed on for the physics and math degrees. The parents of a guy I knew in the dorms back in my bad college days had bought a house up in Gainesville because they had another son who was starting school up there. They thought it'd be a good way to save money on rent and be a good investment. So I rented a room in that house. One of the other guys renting a room there, a friend of the owner's son, had graduated from high school in Melbourne, Florida, which is just south of there. And he actually had a summer co-op job working at the Kennedy Space Center. So, guess that's just one of the perks of growing up in Florida. Now, his name is Mark Sebring, and he'll come up later in the story. The Space Shuttle was finally ready to fly in April of 1981. I now owned a car, but laziness kept me from bothering to drive down to see the first launch on April 10th. But that first launch attempt was scrubbed, and so it was a few days later, by coincidence, April 12th, the 20th anniversary of Yuri Gagarin's flight, when they were going to try again. And my laziness was tested again. I was out at a late-night restaurant with some friends, and one of them really wanted to go down and see the launch, but he didn't have a car. I did. Well, eventually, he talked me into it, so a couple of us piled into my car and drove down to watch the launch the next morning. We parked along a causeway west of the launch pad. We were about 11 miles away. It was a 7 a.m. launch, so we were pretty much looking into the sun. And I remember my impression at the time was that the Space Shuttle seemed like a clumsy design, strapping an airplane onto the side of a rocket. So I was really curious to see this thing fly. But fly it did. I took one picture of the launch. But looking sunward as I was, I needed something to block the sun, so I got into the shadow of the friend who had talked me into driving down for the launch. There he is, providing me shade. His name is Mark Adler, and he went on to get a bachelor's degree in mathematics, a master's degree in electrical engineering, and then got a Hughes Fellowship to get a PhD at Caltech, where he did a thesis on particle physics. Then he got a job at JPL, where he worked out the gravity assist dance that the Cassini spacecraft used to get to Saturn. And for a while, he was the Mars Sample Return Mission Architect. But then he went on to be the Deputy Mission Manager for the Mars Exploration Rovers, Spirit and Opportunity, and the Mission Manager for Spirit. If you read Steve Squires' book, Roving Mars, Steve was the principal investigator for the Mars Exploration Rovers. There's a chapter in there called Adler's Inspiration, where Mark came up with the idea to reuse the bag system they had used on Mars Pathfinder and redesign the rovers to fit. The general gist is that this was the breakthrough idea that saved a mission that was having trouble getting funded. So, Mark's a smart guy. He has since left JPL and gone to work for Apple, where I imagine he's getting paid a lot more. By the way, if you've ever used zip to compress or uncompress a file on your computer, Mark was one of the authors of the zip program. Okay, back to me. Having seen a Space Shuttle launch, I now figured I'd want to see all Space Shuttle launches. For STS-2, the second launch, in November of that year, there was a friend of a friend who had a base pass, so we could all go down in his van to see it from on base. Now, the base pass gets you to a causeway on the Space Center grounds that's about 7 miles from the launch pad. Not as good as the press site, which I think is 3 miles from the pad, but still way better than watching from Titusville or Patrick Air Force Base. Now, here's a picture of the view from that spot. That's Mark Adler with the binoculars around his neck looking cold. The launch tower can be seen just to the right of him, right there. The view through binoculars was pretty good, so I tried my trick of putting my Instamatic camera up to the eyepiece again. This shows you can actually make out the outline of the shuttle. Unfortunately, this launch attempt got scrubbed at T-minus 31 seconds. So, all for naught. Also unfortunate was that our ride was a handicap van, so instead of seats in the back, there was the mechanism that raised the guy's wheelchair. Not particularly comfortable for the 3-hour drive from Gainesville. and the 3-hour drive back. Now, this was all on November 4th. The second launch attempt was on November 12th. Now, I knew about this concept of base pass, where you get to actually be on the base for the launch. I mentioned this to my NASA co-op roommate, Mark Sebring, and he mentioned that his girlfriend from high school now worked at the Space Center, and she could get us a base pass. And so she did. And from then on, a bunch of us would pile into whoever's car seemed to hold the most people and drive down to the Space Center to watch the launches. No more lying in the back of a handicapped van. Now, here's a couple of us waiting for the launch of STS-2. The red car in the foreground is my '68 Barracuda, which I still have sitting in my garage. It's sprouting a CB antenna because back then, CBs were considered cool. The guy standing in the white shirt is Mark Hamilton. Seems like everyone is named Mark in this story. He had been a roommate of mine back in my college dorm days, and he was a fairly active amateur astronomer. To the right of him is his 6-inch Criterion Newtonian reflector telescope. That provided a much better view than my 12x binoculars. And again, I held my Instamatic up to the eyepiece and took a picture. Here's my shot of the launch pad through the binoculars, and here's the view through the telescope. This second attempt at a launch was successful. Now, it's an impressive sight to see in full visual context rather than just on a TV screen. But of course, I had to try again with my binoculars. Not bad for tracking a moving object. Just picture what that looks like in focus. Well, actually, it looks a lot like what you see on TV. Back again for STS-3 in March of 1982. That's Mark Adler sitting on the cooler, and Benny Higdon, our friend who knew the guy with the handicap van and the base pass. The people at KSC do a very good job managing all the people with base passes. They park several rows of cars alongside the Causeway roadway parallel to it. They're tightly packed, so there's no deciding to leave early to beat the rush. You'll just have to wait your turn. And then you need to get moving, no hanging around. There's space between the rows of cars and the water where a lot of people put out blankets and sleeping bags. It's best to get there several hours before the actual launch, so it was often the case of getting there the night before. Around dawn, people began to stir. Now, on this particular morning, we saw some dolphins swimming just off the shore from the causeway. Kind of neat to be reminded that Florida is Florida, and not just a spaceport. By the way, the weird glowing you see near the top of the picture is actually one of those artifacts from my process of scanning photos that are stuck in a photo album. Not real. No launch scrub this time. STS-3 went off as planned. And there it is. What? You don't see it? Let me add an arrow. That help? That little puff of cloud is the exhaust trail. Now, I always prefer to watch the first moments of the launch with my eyes rather than through a viewfinder, so I didn't get a shot of the flame. And there was a fair bit of low cloud cover, so the shuttle disappeared quickly behind the clouds. Here's a shot a bit later. Still no shuttle. Ah, there it is, climbing higher. STS-4 was in June of 1982. Now, this gives you a sense of what it's like as dawn approaches. People have been there all night, sleeping on chairs, in sleeping bags, on blankets, or just on the ground. As you can see, people bring lawn chairs with the expectation that it'll be a long wait till launch time. Once the sun is up, we're heading for a Florida summer day, so people are treating it like a day at the beach. By the way, that's Mark Adler looking back at me with his binoculars. Successful launch right above the arrow. Apologies for some of the weird color blobs. These photos were taken with a Polaroid one-step camera, which would spit out printed photos, but the quality is not what we're used to in this digital era. And the color blobs seem to have come along with age. I don't think they looked this bad when I first took them. My Instamatic photos have aged better. Anyway, off she goes. STS-5 was November 11th, 1 year after the launch of STS-2. So we're not up to the every couple of weeks they promised us. Now, this is a binocular shot and shows one of the challenges in doing this. When you focus binoculars for your eye, you usually set it so that the image is at the distance of most distinct vision, which for most people is only about 2 feet. A cheap Instamatic camera is set to focus on objects at infinity, that is, scenery shots, not close-ups of faces. So the challenge is to look through the binoculars and try to get your eye focused at infinity to match the camera, and then adjust the binoculars to bring that into focus. It's really hard, and I didn't do a very good job on this shot. The other challenge, of course, is getting an Instamatic camera that does not have a through-the-lens viewfinder properly centered against the eyepiece while you are looking through the other binocular eyepiece while tracking a moving target. No such challenge as just taking a picture of exhaust trail aftermath. STS-6 wasn't until April of 1983. Pretty summery in Florida. Here's my obligatory view of the shuttle on the pad through the binoculars. As usual, the photo doesn't do justice for what it looks like looking through the binocs with your eye. Launch time. I find, in retrospect, that I actually prefer the photos that show a wider view of the scene like this rather than the close-ups. The close-ups you can see on TV. But I didn't have a TV screen handy, so at the time, I always thought the binocular views were the most impressive. Once it's far enough away, a lot of people lose interest. You can see one guy still following it with his binoculars. One thing you can't really see naked eye, but you can see with binoculars, is the solid rocket boosters falling away. But I never got a photo of that. I don't think it would have been big enough and clear enough through the binocular photo. But you look pretty keen looking through the binoculars. STS-7 was in June, so only about 2 months after STS-6. Shuttle on the pad through binoculars. Nice wide shot of the launch. Now, this is just such a unique thing to be seeing in the sky. Binocular shot in flight. And another. Now, these show one of the issues in setting the camera right. The camera can't quite get up to the exit pupil of the optical system in the binoculars, so you see the darkness around the edge. Taking pictures of the exhaust trail might not seem that interesting, but it really is a striking thing to see in person. It is definitely not a typical jet airliner contrail. One of the more memorable launches was STS-8 at the end of August 1983, because it was a night launch. Neither my Instamatic nor my Polaroid one-step would succeed at photographing that, so I had to rely on a friend, and I forgot who had a real camera that could capture this. This was really amazing. The only thing that could compare to a Saturn V night launch was a Space Shuttle night launch. There's so much flame coming out of the solid rocket boosters, and this was from only 7 miles away instead of 24. STS-9 was back to the daytime launches. This shows Mark Adler watching it as it goes. I'm not sure, but it looks like you might be able to make out the shock wave in the clouds as an arc around it. It's right about where this circle is. Now, hard to see in the original, so I asked John Astalos if he could use his Photoshop skills to maybe enhance the image some. That seems to bring it out a little more. Thank you, John. And here's the usual binocular shots as it goes. I think I was getting better at these. Let me back up to that first one. The image of the shuttle and the tank is particularly clear. I mean, let me zoom in on that. Now, you have certainly seen better images of the shuttle in flight since then, but I felt pretty good about that. Just an Instamatic camera and a pair of 12x binoculars. That pretty much ends my spate of see every shuttle launch. I've seen a couple since, including another night launch in the 90s, but I wasn't as close. And I think I have an SVHS videotape of that experience somewhere. I did get another opportunity for a special tour of the Space Center. Mark Sebring, that NASA co-op roommate whose girlfriend was our first in for getting base passes, would continue co-op work at the Space Center during the summer. And one day they had a family and friends event where you could invite some family and some friends to see how cool it was to work where you worked. And he invited me to come along. Now, I don't remember what year this was. I think it was probably 1984. This is a picture of the guy whose parents owned the house I was living in and his girlfriend, posing in front of the crawler that's used to take the Saturn V's and space shuttles out to the launch pad. Now, this photo doesn't come near capturing the huge scale of that device. It's farther away than you think. Here's a photo I got off the internet showing the crawler next to a truck with a Saturn V in the distance. The scale of this thing is almost battleship size. In the background is the launch tower used for the Saturn launches. It has the booster seat still in place from its last use as a launch tower for the Saturn 1B launch for Apollo-Soyuz. You can see that it's elevated off the ground. That's so that the crawler can get underneath it to carry the whole thing back and forth between the VAB and the launch complex. This is a photo showing the gravel trackway that the crawler would move along between the VAB and the launch complexes. Adjacent to the VAB is a pair of huge hangars dubbed the Orbiter Processing Facility. This would contain space shuttles in a horizontal position, like a plane instead of a rocket. That's for processing after a flight and in preparation for the next flight. There was a space shuttle in the hangar when we were there. Here's a shot of Mark Sebring, the NASA co-op roommate, and his newer girlfriend. They are posing in front of the engine nozzles on the shuttle that was in the facility. Here's a picture of one of those nozzles. And here's a composite shot that shows how close we were able to get to the shuttle in the processing facility. It was pretty cool. After about this time, space shuttle launches had become so routine that I no longer felt a need to make the trip from Gainesville down to the Space Center, so I stopped going. When the Challenger disaster happened, I was actually asleep in my bed. My clock radio came on, and the first thing I heard the announcer say was that they were searching for pieces of the shuttle in the ocean. I wish all my alarms could instantly make me alert like that. My dad would watch shuttle launches just by going out into his backyard and watching from Satellite Beach. As he watched the Challenger launch, he thought, uh-oh, that doesn't look right. And he went inside and turned on the TV coverage. After that, Florida issued a special license plate commemorating the disaster. I believe the extra money you paid went to the new Astronauts Memorial Foundation. I, of course, got one of those plates, and my license plate number of AAA048 made me look like I was the 48th person in the door statewide to get one of those plates. But it was actually because Gainesville is in Alachua County, and they issued the license letters by county alphabetically. Alachua came first. My bank at the time was Sun Bank, and they released a credit card connected with the AMF. Some portion of sales went to that organization. I moved to Colorado in 1988, but as you can see by the expiration date of January 2003, I kept using that card because I thought it looked so cool. But they had discontinued this card, so this was the last time I could have one like that. When it expired, I closed the account. What I find ironic is that it expired at the end of January 2003. The very next day was the Columbia disaster. So, overall, I'd have to say that living in Florida in the 70s and 80s was pretty cool if you were into space stuff. I got a VIP tour of the Kennedy Space Center, saw a Saturn V inside the VAB being put together for the Apollo 17 mission. The first rocket launch I ever saw was the night launch of a Saturn V. I got another KSC tour with Pratt & Whitney, where I got to see the Enterprise Space Shuttle test article on the launch pad from fairly close up. High school and college students got to have summer co-op jobs working for NASA at the Kennedy Space Center. I got to witness the first 10 Space Shuttle launches, 9 of those from on base. I got to go on a KSC tour where I got to walk right up close to a space shuttle in the orbital processing facility. And I came away with a couple of souvenirs in the form of a neat license plate and credit card. I hated the hot, humid weather living in Florida for 16 years. And having lived in Colorado in the 60s, I was eager to get back. But now, in retrospect, I have to view that as a pretty cool opportunity not available to most people. If you want to see, I brought some. I don't have a lot of souvenirs, but I have a couple, including the old Instamatic camera. And there were a couple things that I realized I could have mentioned that I didn't when I made that thing. One was, not only do you get to see shuttle launches down there, you get to see shuttles land. And I went to one landing, and this was not a base pass scenario, so it was one of those drive out to the causeway by Titusville and watch. And the interesting thing is, when you go to see a space shuttle launch, when you get there, you know exactly where to look. It's the launch pad, especially at night, because it's got all these lights on. And also, you know exactly when it's going to go. There are speakers telling you 10, 9, 8. When you're watching a landing, you got nothing to go by. You're like listening to a transistor radio and hearing them say something like, well, the shuttle's coming in over Alabama right now. I don't know. And so you're looking up in the sky, and then the clue is you see the contrail for the fighter jets that are chase planes that come in alongside it. And you see their contrails beginning to arc around and converge. And as they get close together, you get your binoculars and you go, yep, and there's that little black triangle in the sky, and now you've got it. And so you watch it come down the rest of the way until it disappears behind the trees because you're not actually on base. So that was pretty cool. I got to see that once. Another thing you get to see is when the space shuttle has landed out at Edwards instead of at the Space Center, they bring it back on top of that 747. And so that's another thing everybody along the coast knows about. And that plane flies right up along, just over the ocean, just off the beach, and flies up before landing up at the Space Center. And so it's a case of, okay, well, it's supposed to be at such and such a time, so I'll go there. I've got my camcorder with me. I'm going to videotape this. This will be great. The thing is, it's an airplane flight from California. It's not as precisely timed as a launch. And so what happened was I got to my dad had a timeshare condo at Cocoa Beach. And I got there and I'm walking along the balcony with my camcorder, ready to go set up and shoot the thing. And then there it goes. So I miss any record of it except what's in my brain. The one thing I will say about it is that it's so absurdly big that what it makes you think is that the air is hazier than it is. Because it can't be that big and be that far away. So you think it's closer. And if it's closer, then the added haze would make it be hazy. So it's just kind of a weird thing to see. Yeah, I guess those are the only other two things. Oh, the other thing I was going to mention is that at the end of that, I talked about the souvenirs that I had when I forgot. And I reminded myself when I was trying to decide what to wear today. And I decided to go with Florida. But I have this souvenir t-shirt from STS-1 that has on the front Young and Crippen. Those are the two astronauts on it. And you would find, the little trucks alongside the road selling all kinds of shirts and stuff like that. So I got this one after SDS1, and then I got this one not long after that. What I like about it is what it shows a shuttle on the back landing, and you see little chase planes, and the caption says, "A spaceship has landed on Earth." I just thought that was really cool. So anyway, there's my things. Anybody have any questions?
Just a statement, you forgot love bugs, no-see-ums, and bug spray.
The no-see-ums were a problem. The love bugs were amazing living in Florida. I remember when we first moved down there, if you're not familiar with love bugs, they're about the size of a mosquito, a little bigger, a little denser, blacker. And there's 2 times of the year where they get together and earn their name. Love bugs. So there are always pairs of them stuck together, flying around. And there are so many of them. When you're first there, you see them like, oh, they're going to bite me. No, they got other things on their mind. But I remember driving the Florida Turnpike from Satellite Beach up to Gainesville, and it sounds like rain. You were just hitting so many, hitting the bugs. And then they have these service areas where you can pull in and get gas and get some food and stuff. And they also have just a place where you pull up your car and you catch the weight of your car, and these big water jets come on. And they just hose off the front of your car so that your windshield wipers can go and clean it off. And now you can get back on the road and try to make it well. But yeah, later years in the 80s, I didn't see nearly as many love bugs as I remember seeing in the 70s. I don't know if it's just the time of year. It's like September and May, I think, were the 2 times they tended to come out. I forgot what I was going to say. Okay.
Not so much no-see-ums?
Yeah, not so much for that. The red tide could be a problem, but I don't remember that while I was there. But I moved to Satellite Beach, which is close to the beach, in like August, and then boom, I'm up to Gainesville. So I really wasn't close to the beach all that often.
Last 2 launches we went to, when we turned the car in at Orlando Airport, it looked like they had to shave whiskers off. We had a white car.
Oh,
And the love bugs.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. One of the things I did find interesting at the University of Florida was they have a number of ponds there on campus, and CU has a pond or 2 on campus. There's one over by Last, and the difference is that at the home of the Florida Gators, there are alligators in the ponds on campus, and you see them. And then there was actually a fairly large lake called Lake Alice that was on campus, and there was a guy, everybody called him Gator Man, who goes swim in the lake with the alligators. So yeah, he was a little weird. So okay, is that it?
Yeah.
All right. No Dewey questions?
Just
Now,
nice
what we will-
job, Dewey.
Oh, thanks so much, John. So what we'll do is the usual, let's take the picture first, and then we'll see about packing up all the chairs and stuff.
Oh, John, are you doing that?